Have you ever woken up and felt like the weight of the world was already on your chest? Not because of the news, not because anything actually happened, but because your soul feels heavy before you even step out of bed. What if the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're weak, but because you've been carrying energy that was never yours in the first place? If you're an empath, you know this feeling all too well. You don't need chaos to feel overwhelmed. Sometimes just existing in a noisy, disconnected world is enough to drain you. Because you don't just feel your own emotions, you absorb everyone else's, like a living antenna for pain, pressure, and everything unspoken. Their stress becomes your stress. Their hidden anger, you feel it before they do. And yet we live in a world that glorifies the opposite: noise, hustle, constant alerts. We celebrate the loudest voice in the room, not the deepest one. And if you're the quiet, emotionally aware type, it can make you feel like you're somehow doing life wrong. But what if you're not broken? What if the problem isn't that you feel too much, but that this world doesn't know what to do with someone who feels everything? Because here's the truth: your sensitivity isn't weakness, it's data, it's intelligence, and maybe it's your gift. Why is it that the moment you try to protect your peace, guilt shows up first? You cancel plans because you're overwhelmed. You say no to someone who drains you. You finally set a boundary with a friend, a partner, maybe even a parent. And still, that little voice creeps in. Maybe I'm the selfish one. But let's pause for a second. Where did we learn that saying no is wrong? Why is protecting your energy framed as betrayal? If you're emotionally sensitive, if you feel deeply, chances are you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is measured by how much you can tolerate. We were taught that love means sacrifice, that being a good person means always being available, and worst of all, we were told that walking away, even from dysfunction, is disloyal. But what if that's a lie? What if the real betrayal is abandoning yourself? Carl Jung said it best: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become that person if you're buried beneath guilt. You can't grow if you're constantly apologizing for needing space. And you definitely can't heal if your boundaries make you feel like the villain. So here's a radical idea. Maybe setting boundaries isn't selfish. Maybe it's sacred. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that your job was... We grow up hearing things like, be nice, don't make waves, respect your elders. But what happens when that elder crosses a line? What happens when being nice means betraying yourself again? You see, we're not just emotionally sensitive. We've been conditioned to tolerate pain, to normalize dysfunction, especially when it comes wrapped in the label family. And when that pain goes unchallenged, it doesn't go away. It becomes burnout. It becomes spiritual confusion. It becomes that voice inside you that whispers, maybe I'm the problem. But you're not. You've just been running a script that was never yours to begin with. Carl Jung called this path individuation, becoming your true self, not the mask you were trained to wear. And to walk that path, you'll need to do something radical. Detach. Detach from guilt. Detach from shame. Detach from the idea that love means self-abandonment. Because your job is not to carry the emotional weight of others. Your job is to become. If you've ever felt constantly tired, like no amount of sleep, coffee, or motivation hacks ever seem to work, Let me offer a different lens. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're energetically entangled. See, when you're an empath, you're not just living your own life. You're carrying fragments of everyone else's. Their emotions, their chaos, their unspoken pain. And all of it quietly weaves itself into your nervous system until your body can't tell what's yours and what's not. That's not exhaustion from effort. That's exhaustion from absorption. So if you've been asking yourself, why can't I get motivated? Maybe the real question is, what am I still holding on to that was never mine to carry? This is where true healing begins. Not with more effort, but with detachment. Detachment from the emotional clutter, from guilt, from that toxic version of goodness that tells you your worth is defined by how much pain you can endure without breaking. We were taught to be proud of our ability to tolerate, to stay quiet, to keep showing up, even when it hurts. But what if being good was never the goal? What if the goal is to be clear? Because clarity doesn't come from overgiving. It comes from choosing yourself, boldly, unapologetically, and maybe even selfishly. Not to abandon others, but to finally stop abandoning you. Let me ask you something. Have you ever held in your anger for so long that when it finally came out, it shocked even you? That's not weakness. That's the shadow. Carl Jung called it the part of ourselves we repress, the anger we weren't allowed to express, the grief we never made space. We're told to be strong by staying silent, to be kind by staying in places that drain us, to be good by always giving, even when it costs us everything. But here's the truth. You don't find yourself by pleasing everyone else. You don't become whole by carrying emotional debt that was never yours to pay. Real transformation begins the moment you stop pretending and start honoring your shadow, not to judge it, not to shame it, but to integrate it. Because individuation, the journey to becoming your true self, can't happen if you're stuck in guilt. And it definitely can't happen if you're still trying to earn love by abandoning who you are. So let me say it clearly. Walking away from what depletes you isn't selfish, it's sacred. You're not here to be everyone's emotional lifeline. You're here to come home to you. And free to guiltance every ways. 7. Saving. To feel shame. Saving you is kind of fun. The guilt fun was saying no, when until we're good is better. The guilt's fun aftering to we're in adventures. The attentional is a lest saving. There's proceed and no to guilt, right home, to silent, to space, and want, to silent. Guilt and shame aren't signs of morality. They're tools of control. They weren't given to you to make you better. They were programmed into you to make you obedient. Carl Jung once called shame a souling emotion, and he was right. It doesn't just sting, it sticks. It burrows into your self-worth and chokes your clarity. Have you ever wondered why your motivation disappears the moment guilt walks in? Why you suddenly feel lost, unfocused, or like your dreams don't belong to you anymore? That's not failure. That's energetic interference. Because real motivation doesn't come from pressure. It doesn't come from proving, pleasing, or performing. It comes from space, from having a clean inner field, one where your voice is louder than shame, one where your truth isn't filtered through what others might think. So here's your permission slip. You're allowed to care less. Not less about your purpose, but less about opinions, less about who misunderstands your silence, less about disappointing those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Because clarity, the kind that changes your life, only comes when you finally release what was never yours to carry. Let me introduce a phrase you may not hear often, but once you do, it'll change everything. Energy hygiene. Think of it like brushing your soul's teeth, not just once a year. And over time, you start to forget what feelings are yours and what you've absorbed from everyone else. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He didn't use the term energy hygiene, but he spoke endlessly about psychic impressions, archetypes, and the unconscious forces that shape our inner lives. Empaths navigate those forces every single day, like it said, despard of refrain. But most of us do it unprotected. And that's why you might feel drained after certain conversations, why you wake up feeling heavy without knowing why you can't seem to clear your mind even when everything around you is quiet. You're not broken, you're just full of things that were never yours to carry. So if no one's ever told you this before, you have permission to start treating your energy with the same respect you give your time, your body, and your heart. Because boundaries aren't walls, they're filters, and clarity begins when you finally learn to ask yourself, is this mine? Here's a truth that might feel uncomfortable at first. Not all energy is sacred. Some of it is sticky, some of it's manipulative, and some of it was never meant to be anywhere near your nervous system. If you're an empath, you've probably spent your life assuming that everyone means well, that if you just stay kind enough, patient enough, open enough, people will eventually meet you with the same level of care you offer them. But energy doesn't lie, and not all of it is aligned. Some people aren't looking for connection, they're looking for access to your compassion, to your silence, to your ability to keep showing up even when they keep crossing lines. That's why energy hygiene isn't just about boundaries, it's about clearing. And it starts with taking inventory. What's in your space that's still holding the frequency of pain? Is your phone filled with names that trigger anxiety? Do your DMs feel like emotional dumping grounds? Is your bedroom holding onto objects, gifts, photos, memories that are quietly draining you? These are not small things. Energy clings to what you allow. So here's what I recommend. Block the number, burn the letter, open your windows, play music that heals, and clean your space with intention. Not just physically, but emotionally. And use this mantra. If it drains me, it doesn't deserve me. Because you are not a landfill for other people's unresolved pain. You are a living, breathing field of energy. And what you allow in shapes what you become. Here's something that might shake your world a little. You are allowed to say no, without guilt, without explanation, even to the people who raised you, especially to them. Because detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the moment you stop negotiating your peace to make others comfortable. It's the moment you realize that love, without respect, is not love. See, a powerful empath is a rare thing. Not because we're weak, but because the world has always feared what we could become if we stopped apologizing. You were trained to believe that kindness means staying quiet, that being available is proof of your worth, that you're a good person only if you answer every call, soothe every wound, carry every burden. But who benefits from that version of you? The truth is, you don't owe anyone your emotional labor. You don't have to justify your healing. You don't have to stay in places where your presence is expected, but your truth is dismissed. You were never meant to be everyone's safe place while abandoning your own soul. So here's your radical permission slip. Start saying no. Start valuing your time like it's sacred. Start protecting your peace like it's a temple, because it is. And the moment you choose clarity over guilt, everything in your life begins to realign. Carl Jung once said that the goal of life isn't perfection, it's wholeness. And wholeness doesn't come from being good all the time. It comes from embracing the parts of you that the world told you to hide. Your anger, your grief, your desires, your need for space, even your no. This is the path of individuation, the journey of becoming your true self, not the self shaped by pressure, guilt, or expectation, but the one that lives beneath all the roles you've been taught to play. And let's be honest, healing is not always graceful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it means outgrowing identities that once felt like home. Sometimes it means becoming someone your past can't recognize. But that's not selfish. That's sacred. Because true healing requires discomfort. It asks you to stop performing and start aligning, to stop forcing yourself to be motivated by fear and start letting your soul move toward what feels like truth. When your life is in alignment, when your choices come from authenticity instead of approval, that's when motivation returns. Not the fake kind that's fueled by deadlines or shame, but the kind that rises naturally, like breath. So if you've been asking, why can't I stay consistent? Maybe the question isn't about discipline. Maybe it's about alignment. Because when you're finally living as the person you were always meant to be, you don't need to force the fire. The fire lives in you. Here's something no one really tells you. Real love doesn't come with guilt. It doesn't come with control. It doesn't ask you to shrink, dim, or betray your own peace just to be accepted. True love, whether romantic, platonic, or spiritual, meets you in your wholeness, not in your wounds. And that's why protecting your peace is not just self-care, it's sacred preparation. Because when you create space, when you stop filling your life with people who drain, distract, or And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing, rescuing, or proving your worth, the right people find you. People who don't need you to be their savior. People who respect your boundaries without question. People who love you in your power, not in your pain. But this only happens when you heal. When you stop leaking your energy into broken patterns and start holding your frequency like it's your compass. You weren't meant to fix everyone. That's not your assignment. Your assignment is to shine, to stand tall, to stay rooted in who you are, like a lighthouse. Lighthouses don't chase ships. They don't beg to be seen. They simply glow in their stillness. And the ships that are meant to find them always do. If there's one thing I hope you take from this message, it's this. Stop leaking your energy into wounds that aren't yours to heal. You're not here to be a permanent bandage for people who refuse to stop bleeding on purpose. You are not here to keep fixing, soothing, or sacrificing until there's nothing left of you. You are here to rise, to remember, to reclaim the light you've spent years dimming just to fit into spaces too small for your soul. And no, choosing yourself is not selfish. It's sacred. Because every time you say yes to yourself, you give permission to the part of you that's been waiting in the shadows, hoping you'd finally come back home. So leave what drains you. Let it go with love. Not because you're bitter, but because you're finally ready to be well. Walk toward what ignites you, what nourishes you, what reminds you of who you are before the world told you who to be. This space, right here, is for the deep feelers, the quiet ones, the sensitive ones, the ones who've been told they're too much, too soft, too emotional. But maybe you were never too much. Maybe you were just meant to burn brighter than most. And now, after all the survival, it's time to live, to speak, to shine. Because the world doesn't need you diluted. It needs you whole, on